Hey there guys, I am the Sixth Machine and welcome back to another Warhammer video. The Ork Codex is very nearly upon us, and so I thought for this possibly last Ork related video before the Codex releases, we would take a look at those brand new Ork cultures, see how they compare against the ones that we currently know, and maybe try to rank them in order of which I think are the best. So let's get started, and up first we have those poor cultures which are sitting, in my opinion, very firmly at the bottom. Starting off, we have those greenskins from the Blood Axes, who, as of the new 9th edition Codex, have a culture which is pretty much exactly the same as their old one, letting you gain the benefit of light cover against ranged attacks that come from enemies over 18 inches away, and then also letting you fall back and still either charge or shoot. The cover bonus is, I'll be honest, kind of meh in my opinion. Orks are still a pretty poor army when it comes to saves, so going from a 6 up to a 5 up or a 5 up to a 4 up respectively really just isn't all that exciting to me, and the fact that it's only from further than 18 inches away makes it massively less likely that it will come into effect for much of the game. Compared to the factions that have similar abilities but at a 12-inch range, it is just so much easier for your enemy to get in that 18-inch bubble, and especially on the smaller 9th edition tables, it's likely that turn 1 you will get it, maybe turn 2, but after that it's just not going to come into effect at all. The second part, again, isn't bad by any means. The ability to fall back and then either shoot or charge is a powerful one, especially for a melee unit like some Mega Knobs who may wish to charge something else, but I'm just not sure. It doesn't feel as impactful to me as some of the other new culture abilities, and quite often in this game, if you are in combat with something, you may well end up having a big chunk of your unit already dead before you can even get the chance to make the most of this rule and then fall back and charge something else. I mean, especially when you consider just how killy pretty much everything is in the game right now. Second on the list, we have a culture which has really suffered going from 8th to 9th edition, and that is the Bad Moons. Going from the previous rule which let them reroll 1s to hit in the shooting phase, they now gain 6 inches to dagger and heavy weapons, and also get the rule that unmodified 6s to wound with their ranged attacks gain an extra -1 AP. Now on the face of it, that's 2 rules rather than 1, so that's a positive, but when you dig down into it, I mean, the extra range isn't bad, but again, on the tables of 9th edition, that smaller size battlefield means that this rule will likely only have an impact in turn 1 before you or your enemy will very likely be up within range of your guns anyway, even if you didn't have the extra range. And then the bonus AP on 6s to wound is again really very nice, but only goes off on 6s, and 6s to wound, not even 6s to hit. So you have to go through the entire hit step and the entire wound step for a chance to get this off. And with Orc shooting being so bad anyway, I think it is much stronger to have that original reroll 1s just to help you get as many hits as you can on your enemy, rather than hoping for that extra -1 AP if you get through all the hurdles that you need to actually get it. And annoyingly, I actually think that the -1 AP would have been a great addition to the reroll 1s that they had in 8th rather than the extra range, and I think if they had combined the reroll 1s and the extra -1 AP on 6s to wound, it probably would have been a bit more of a solid culture. But as it is, even if you are bringing a shooty Orc list, I just don't feel like this offers enough to really be worth it compared to some of the other cultures that you have available to you. On to the midpoint of the available cultures, we reach the Evil Sons. Once feared as the terrifyingly fast, speedy clan, these guys took another real hit going into 9th. Their old culture gave them +1 to move and +2 to move if you were a Speed Freaks model, and then +1 to both advance and charge rolls, and then in addition to that, it gave you no penalty for advancing and firing assault weapons. This has now been changed massively to +1 movement, and again +2 movement to Speed Freaks models, and then +1 to advances. So yes, two of the biggest, most impactful parts of this rule, the +1 to charge range and ignoring the penalties for advancing and shooting assault guns, are now gone, making this effectively just an extra 2 or 3 inches of movement on your models if you're happy to give up your shooting. It is honestly just really quite bad. I will say that with Orks being a relatively slow army, at least with their foot slogging units, I still do think I prefer it to the two previous cultures, and if you are running a pure speed freaks or a fast moving army, then yes, possibly that extra speed will help and will add up over the course of the game, but it's just so incredibly niche, and the fact that it's such a big nerf from 8th edition really makes this culture a disappointing one to me. It does just really feel like it's been gutted completely, and yeah, it's really lost, in my opinion, a lot of the teeth that made this culture really powerful, and unless you know exactly how you want to use it, I would say the Evil Sunz culture just really isn't worth taking. But now the good news, we are on to the genuinely decent cultures now, and all of the following ones are at least pretty damn good. We start off here with the favoured clan of the Snaggers, the Snakebites, and as we've seen on the Warhammer community, this is the one that gives you semi-transhuman physiology, letting you ignore wound rolls of 1 to 3 when you are attacked with a weapon that is strength 7 or below, which is really great, even though Orks are generally toughness 5 and 6 across the board at the moment. It is still really useful to have against those strength 6 and those strength 7 weapons. Autocannons, assault cannons, onslaught gatling cannons, and all that kind of stuff really will feel a lot less effective against your units now. But it's also the second part, in my opinion, which is very much making this culture a lot more powerful than people think. If you are going for a heavy Snaggers force, then letting you gain +1 to wound if the Squig model has charged or heroically intervened really will bump up that damage output from a lot of your units. And if you go Squig heavy with Squig Hog Boys and Squig Knobs and War Bosses and all that kind of stuff, you can get a heck of a lot of +1 to wound across your army with those units. And with generally strength 6 and above weapons, you are going to be wounding a lot of the enemies in the game on 3s or possibly even 2s, which will hugely improve your damage output. So yeah, I honestly really like this culture. It's a lot better than I think a lot of us initially thought when we first saw it on Warhammer Community, and I do think that if you want to go for a heavy Snaggers force and a heavy Squig force, this is definitely one to consider. Another clan that people thought was being massively gutted is the Lucky Blue Gits from the Death Skulls. Their previously, let's be honest, absolutely incredible culture was always going to be taking a bit of a nerfing going into 9th edition, but the rumours were making it look quite a bit worse than what we actually got. Their old trait of gaining not only a 6-up invuln, but also infantry gaining objectives secured, and then on top of that being able to reroll a hit, a wound, and a damage dice for each unit, was honestly one of the best army-wide abilities in the entire game, pretty much giving every single one of your units 3 free command points every single phase, which is just mind-blowingly good. This has now obviously been heavily toned down, not only by having the 6-up invuln removed, but also losing 2 of those rerolls, with the new rule letting you reroll either a hit or a wound roll per unit. So it is a lot less powerful, even if you are bringing lots of small min-sized squads in your army. But they did get a small level of recompense in that they now have a 5-up to ignore mortal wounds as well, which is okay. I think a lot of people don't like it because they just don't think it's as good as a 6-up invuln, which is true, but bear in mind, with Grey Knights and Thousand Suns on the horizon, there may well be a lot more mortal wounds coming to the meta in the near future. So I do think that this culture could prove to be very much a sleeper hit in the next couple of months, as that 5-up to ignore mortal wounds becomes more useful as different armies come to the front and can start spamming more mortal wounds into your units. The big thing that this culture keeps, counter to what the rumours were saying, is that Death Skull's infantry do indeed keep their objective secured ability, which gives them so much more utility and use on the battlefields of 9th edition, and lets you use things like Storm Boys to charge up and steal objectives from your opponent. I think if this had gone, Death Skulls would 100% be in the bottom 2 cultures, but the fact that they have kept this objective secure rule really does give them a huge bonus, which I think honestly makes them a worthwhile clan to consider, even with all the other nerfs that have come along with the 9th edition codex. Up next, we have the clan that everyone thought was being removed completely. The hardy Freebooters are indeed still in the codex, and their trait has honestly had a really big boost in its effectiveness, and it seems like a very strong one indeed. It's almost identical in its wording. The previous rule was that it allowed you to add 1 to hit rolls for models with this culture if another friendly unit within 24 inches had destroyed an enemy unit in this phase. Now, this quite frankly brilliant pseudo army-wide +1 to hit buff has no range limitation. It is just a completely battlefield-wide buff. So if one of your Freebooters units destroys an enemy unit, the entire rest of your list, assuming they're all Freebooters of course, gets +1 to hit for that phase. And it doesn't specify shooting, so this can essentially be an army-wide +1 to hit in ranged or in melee, which is honestly unbelievably powerful, bumping that Orky 5-up ballistic skill to a much more reliable 4-up, and giving almost your entire army 2+ to hit when you get into melee range. So I think this one does require a tiny bit more finesse than maybe some of the others, but if you combo this with a well-timed warg, then your entire army can potentially charge in, unleash a huge number of incredibly accurate high damage attacks right into your enemy, and honestly, that one move could win you the entire game. Obviously there is the downside that you need to kill an enemy unit to activate it, so against some armies it may be harder to achieve than others. If you're up against, say, Imperial Knights, it may be tricky to get this buff off, but if you're against an army that has cheap chaff units, you can just very easily shoot one off the board, and then for the rest of that phase you have an entire army-wide +1 to hit buff, which is really strong. And then finally, we have the clan which I think, for my playstyle at least, is the best in the new codex, and one which also got a very welcome buff. That is of course the Goths. Previously this culture was already pretty decent, letting you get an extra attack for every 6 to hit in melee that you rolled, but this part alone has had a huge buff in that now when you roll a 6 to hit in melee, you don't get an extra attack. No, you just get a flat out extra hit. So you won't need to go through the hit step roll again to try and get that second hit. It's just an automatic 2 hits for every hit roll of 6, which in and of itself would be a fantastic culture trait, but that is not all. It gets even better. When your Goths unit has made a charge or heroically intervened, then they get +1 strength to their melee attacks for their turn. And what this means is that your regular boys will be swinging at strength 5, your Snagger Squighog boys at strength 7, and even bumping your war bosses and HQs in some cases up to strength 8 and above with the right loadout, so really helping you to hit some of those crucial breakpoints when it comes to wounding on 3s or even 2s. And I will be honest with you, I think either one of those 2 traits alone would have probably put the Goths above the Blood Axes, but the fact that they are both together just propels the Goths into, in my opinion, the premier melee-focused Ork list. And even on your more shooty units, the exploding 6s means that you can, in a pinch, get a semi-decent number of attacks to help you fight off the harassment units that may try to tie up some of your ranged weapons. But in the hands of your boys, your mega knobs, even things like bikers and buggies, this is a huge bonus to their melee damage output. And with an army that can do very strong lists that like to get up the board as fast as they can and right into your enemy's face, this will really help you to stomp over anything that your opponent may try to put in your path. It's not only a fantastic trait, but also, in my opinion, the most orky one as well, which just in my book gives it even more points. So there we go, that is the brand new Ork Kulturs. Mostly an improvement, there's still a couple that are kinda sucky, but in the most part, you should be able to choose one which fits your playstyle really well and have it be still pretty effective. But which of the new traits do you like the most, and which will you be using in your Ork army? Let me know in the comments below, and as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do like and subscribe for more Warhammer content from me, but until next time, I will catch you later, guys.